to Bigfoot Crossroads. I'm your host, Matt Knapp, joined with your other host, Jonathan Brown.
Hello.
We're joined with Fred Eaton. I haven't had the pleasure of talking to Fred very much. The post that he's made that I've read in the Facebook pages I hang out on tell me he knows quite a bit, and he's had some encounters. I know my good friend Bear speaks highly of Fred, thinks a lot of him, and we're glad to have him on the show. Fred, how are you doing?
Hello, Matt. I'm doing good.
How's it going, Fred?
Hey, I'm doing good, John.
We've been trying to make this happen for, what, a week now? 2 weeks,
maybe a week.
It's been longer than that.
I think we got everything plugged in the right way this time, though. Fred, why don't you tell us a little bit of your background, how you got involved in this whole thing, and where you're from, because I think that's the biggest part of this whole thing.
Okay, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Fred Eaton, and I'm, normally when we introduce ourselves in Navajo, we normally introduce ourselves as the clan, and my maternal clan is Hushklishni, which means mud. And then I'm born for on my paternal side, which is my dad, is Torichini, which is bitter water. So just like to say you guys hello, Yate, and it's good to be here with you guys.
Awesome.
So that's cool. That's really cool. Not to get off subject or anything, but when you mentioned like the bitter water, in the movie Wind Talkers, when Adam Beach is talking about, being from the bitter water clan and everything, is that like the same thing?
Yes, it is. Pretty much same thing, yes.
No, that's cool.
So, Fred, you're obviously a Navajo.
Yes.
Were you raised traditionally, or?
I was raised semi-traditionally. I'm actually getting back into the traditional ways of, culture-wise.
Right.
And that's something that I'm working on, which is very awesome, which I enjoy.
You before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about how you speak Navajo, and you know people that don't even speak English. All they speak is your native language, and I find that really interesting because here in quote in unquote Indian territory of Oklahoma, we have a lot of tribes out here, various groups of Native Americans, but I've hardly ran across anyone that actually speaks their native language, to any extent at all. How did you guys hang on to your language like that out there?
It's basically through our elders, grandparents and stuff. But, on my side of the family, my parents went through the boarding schools and stuff like that. So it was kind of like a taboo to speak Navajo. So, that's basically that's how I was taught was, majority of it was English. So, and then, for me, they would actually leave me out at my grandparents, which, they were basically just fluent Navajo. And
Were
that's...
you saying that your grandma doesn't even speak English?
Yeah, she doesn't at all.
I think
No,
that's actually pretty cool.
are the younger generations picking it up as well?
A lot of them, yes, I would say, and a lot of them, no.
Right.
It all depends on the parents. So I'm actually slowly getting back to my native tongue, and I understand it fluently, but when I do speak it, my tongue gets kind of twisted and that the things don't come out correctly sometimes.
Right.
So, and then that's when my grandparents get after me and say, "What are you saying there?"
Well,
Yeah.
there's a reason I'm asking all of this, and it's going to play into the conversation a little bit later, so be ready for it. um,
It depends.
but like, tell us how you got involved with Bigfoot, or what do they call it out there? Is it still called Bigfoot where you're at? Or?
Yeah, yeah, they call it Bigfoot. The Navajo word for Bigfoot. I'm not really supposed to say it now because winter's over, but
Well,
it
don't
is
say
cold outside.
it.
Yeah,
Don't say
but
it.
it is cold outside, and we still got snow in the mountains, so I believe it's okay to say it. Um, it's called Yeitso, which is a basically a giant in
Okay.
Navajo. And there's other words for it, that people describe it. The majority of the Navajo language it's all by description, and that's how it's described.
Well, when you're out there with like Randy Yazzie and people that are in your research group, like what do you guys refer to it as?
We refer as Bigfoot. We also refer to as the Hustine, and there's another word that we describe it also as is Hustith, Hustine Declo, which means hairy mountain man.
Wow.
And how are these things viewed out there? Here in Oklahoma, there's a lot of people that view them as aggressive beings. Where in the Pacific Northwest, you have more of the gentle giants and everything. Like, what's kind of the tone or temperament of them where you're?
I believe that it all depends. If they're, a lot of them, around here, from the stories and from the encounters and from what people describe them as, it's just like, like the encounters that I had, they were peaceful encounters, but on top of that also too, it was very terrifying. And that's something that, I wouldn't want to wish upon other people, that haven't had it, or, there's a lot of people that want to have encounters, but then again, it all depends on how well they take it
Right.
mentally and, mentally.
Yeah, it's really easy to talk about like, oh, if I saw a Bigfoot, I would react this way, et cetera, et cetera. When you actually see one, it's completely different. I mean, there's so many thoughts and emotions that are going through you at the time that it's really easy to just simply freeze up and you just
Yeah,
simply get freaked out.
exactly. Yeah, going back to when you first met, when you first asked a question on how did I get involved in this Bigfoot research and stuff, and it was basically from several of my experiences and sightings and encounters. It goes all the way back to my first, which was back in 1973 when I was about 5 years old. That was a window encounter. Um, that was one of the probably the most terrifying experience, of my life.
I can only imagine. And that seems to be sort of a repeating thing with Bigfoot is them peeking in windows at young children at night for some reason. And, you hear stories whenever you get older naturally that, as far as I can tell, are just stories of them, kidnapping children and women and things of that nature. But those stories might have started from I guess, their curiosity at peeking in on children at night and things of that nature. But as a young child, I can only imagine how terrifying that would have been.
Yeah, like what did you do when that happened?
I just basically froze, screamed, got terrified, and ran to my parents' room.
Now, how did they react to it? Were they, oh, you were just seeing things, or you were having a bad dream, or
Exactly. Just seeing things, bad dream, whatever, and oh, it's going to be okay. You got that, mom and dad type comforting, trying to comfort you and stuff like that.
Well,
So,
being the Navajo reservation, I don't think they just started like coming around, in the 1970s. I'm sure it was something that was happening even when they were growing up.
yeah.
Do they have like experiences of their own? Your parents?
Yep. The only experience that they've had is actually vocalizations. My mom was talking to me the other day, and she said that, they would hear that howl or scream. And anyway, the dogs would be going crazy outside, and basically, they just, you know, since a lot of people down that area, it's a rural area, so they would just grab their rifles and shoot up in the air or shoot up towards the hill and just basically quiet the area down. So,
what kind of terrain is it out there primarily? Is it rocky desert or forested or what?
yeah, it's a rocky desert. There's a lot of farmland where the river flows. There's a lot of tamarisk trees, cottonwood, a lot of salt brush, and then up higher where the rock formations are, it's mainly mesas and big boulders, rocks, and stuff like that.
What have you kind of thought about how they survive there? Like, what kind of plants or animals do they eat? Water
Gosh,
sources, do they follow the creeks out there like they do here, or is it different?
no, there's a lot of food source here for them. It's all ranges from wildlife. You got the deer, you got the elk, you got a lot of rabbits, waterfowl, fish is plentiful. And basically during the planting season, during harvest, you got all kinds of vegetables and food, corn and stuff.
In the area that you're at, in the areas that you go researching, is it primarily like rock formations, or do you also have like pockets where there's some tree cover and stuff?
Yeah, it's a majority of it is tree cover around the river area. There is sometimes there is other areas that we go to is basically just open desert, hills, canyons and draws and stuff like that, and then basically flows down towards the river area.
As far as like the activity that you guys experience and stuff. Well, before we get to that, I guess maybe we should rewind. Like, what got you into like Bigfoot researching?
Yeah. And I was saying, my first encounter was back in '73, and then I had some other encounters, other two window encounters again. One was back sometime around, I would say 83, 84. I was probably 12 years old at that time. And then the other one was just recently, sometime within 10 to 13 years ago, which is probably brings us back to 2003, 2005. That was my latest window sighting and encounter.
So I imagine
And
by
then
that point, you called up mom and dad and said, it's not just a bad dream.
exactly, that's correct.
So
And
is that around the time that you did start getting serious into finding out about these things?
no, I've been kind of doing it ever since I was a teenager because going if we rewind all the way back again, back in grade school, that's one of the things that I would basically do is start checking out books and bringing books home of Bigfoot or the Yeti and stuff like that. And I don't know. It was just something that I guess I was really interested in. And
Okay,
then
drawn to it.
yeah, and then back when I was a teenager, and that's one thing too that me and my friend, we would always go out, going either hiking or either hunting, and we were just out there looking for tracks and to see if we do find, their tracks out there. And it's just something like a hit and miss. You go look out for the hairy creature and stuff like that, and we would be out there and you know basically wee hours in the morning searching, driving around on a motorcycle.
As far as Bigfoot goes in the Navajo Reservation, is it one of those things that, in a lot of places, the Indians, even, on the reservation that I live on, I would say the majority of them just kind of accept it as, yeah, it's, another animal that, is around us. Or is there like, Bigfoot believers, or is it just simply most people just know that they're out there?
The majority know that they're out there. My grandfather, and he would talk about it like there it was a description of there is get inside, you got them creatures outside, you better get inside. That was one of the things that they would tell us. And relatives would say the same thing too, get inside, you guys aren't supposed to be outside, the boogeyman's going to go get you and stuff like that. So
You mentioned earlier about not supposed to say their name. Uh, by the Navajo, are they considered more of a spiritual being or a bad omen?
no, it's just culture. There's being a Dene Navajo people, there's certain things that you're supposed to, that you can say during a certain time. It's basically in seasons.
Huh.
You got the 4 seasons and stuff like that. And then, there's times also too that you can tell stories, or, it's just something that we're taught.
Right. Out here, there's different things that you're not supposed to say their name or talk about them or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's always been an association with they're bad, and that's why you don't mention them. That's why I was asking. Are first by the Navajo, are they considered an animal or a human, and how do you view them personally?
Um, that is interesting because, and by what I've researched and by what I've seen, they actually have the human like features. They have the nose, they have the eyes, they have the eyebrow, they have the cheekbone, they, they got the lips, they got the chin, the ears, 5 fingers, five, basically 2 hands and feet.
Right.
So I don't know. It's I
That
guess,
seems to be,
yeah.
the big question um, among people that start looking into these things. What's the biggest, would you say, encounter you've had or sighting?
I would say my window experience back in '05, that was probably one of the things that really probably brought out a lot of, I don't know if you would say, repressed memories. And I think that was probably, it just enhanced it even by a threefold or something.
kind of walk us through that, how it happened and everything.
It just basically happened over a summer night. It was moonlight outside, and basically I was either awoken by, I don't know. I just all of a sudden woke up, looked to my right, looked out the window right there. The bed. If I'm laying, let's say on my back, and to my right is the window, and I could touch the window if I were to just, fold my arm over. And anyway, the creature basically was just standing there looking at me. And I don't know how long it was looking and watching us. And as soon as I guess glanced at it, basically I shoot it off because it was so huge and so big and tall.
What did his face look like when you were looking at him?
I would describe it as Neanderthal looking. You got the big eyes, got the big brow, nose, lips, chin, head, body.
Was there enough light that you could like make out like skin color, or was it?
No, no, because it was actually moonlight. I do remember though that the eyes, they were amber, and I don't know if it was from the reflection off of the moon or the reflection off of a sodium vapor light from my neighbor's house, basically reflecting off on it. I don't know. But anyway, as soon as I, just basically got up and shoot it off, and I could hear it run towards the from north to south, and it basically ran south, and then I don't know, I would say 20 to 30 yards. It basically, what it did was it grabbed a one of our cedar fence pole and used it as a, I don't know if you would say pole vault, and just basically jumped right over the fence and took off. And the uh, the cedar posts broke. Also,
Wow.
it broke off the top portion of it. So
That's some
Oh,
intense pressure.
yeah,
yeah. What would you say
yeah,
the size was?
I would say I would estimate it between 8 to 9 feet tall.
Is that typical where you're at? That kind of size?
There's all sizes in this area because there's a lot of there's juveniles, and then there's up to the I guess the taller ones, which are probably range, I would say, close to 10 to 12 feet tall.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is.
And when you're seeing like the 10 to 12 footers, would that be pretty rare to see one that size?
I would I would say not, because there is a lot of witnesses that do describe them that tall, for them to be that tall, to tower over the cedar trees, west of this location.
Have you like personally seen any that were 10 to 12 feet tall?
No, I have not.
Would you want to see one that tall?
Yeah, I would think so. But,
I would assume you would. I mean, you're basically
yeah.
the Bigfoot guy on the reservation, you and Randy.
Yeah, a lot of people actually, they contact us. I got a lot of friends also that actually part of the team that actually help. One of my good friends, his name is Edwin Hastings. He helps us quite a bit, and he's a really good tracker, as myself and Randy. So, and then there's a lot of other guys that basically help us too. That they would prefer not to be mentioned, but they do. They're very good at helping me out. So we, a lot of people call us and ask for our help, and what they ask us is because I don't know, maybe it's because that they don't have anybody to go to. Because if you were to report it to the police or law enforcement, yeah, they'll come by, give a report, but other than that, if it hadn't done anything like break in or anything out of the ordinary, then I don't think they would really take it that serious. So, but a lot of people do call us, and they are so glad that we're there to help them, and just offering our services to them.
That seems to be an area that's often overlooked whenever it comes to sightings and encounters and investigations and researches. The actual psychological impact it can have on somebody. I mean, because, when we go out and we're actually looking for these things, seeing one is a reward, but for somebody who doesn't even know these things exist, or, just saw Finding Bigfoot or something like that, whenever they see one, it can be a traumatizing event. Um, how did you feel, you know, growing up and having these encounters and everything? Have you gotten to a point now where you're more kind of desensitized?
I wouldn't think so, Matt, to be desensitized to it. I don't think, if I don't think I would ever be desensitized to it. There's always that, thought of, you know, holy S.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. With myself, the first sighting, I spent a period of time afterwards trying to explain it to myself mentally, what it was, because it couldn't have been a Bigfoot, even though I knew it was, but I was looking for other answers. But it almost seems like every time I would have an encounter, the few sightings that I've had, they all seem to impact me a little bit differently, but at the same time, it was still like that first time. It was still just uh, awe-inspiring, I guess, or shocking almost,
yeah.
that these things are just out there. Have you found? How can I put this? Um, there's a lot of them out there, more so than people realize.
Yes, there is.
I would say that was one of the biggest things for me personally. It trickles down growing up as a kid and having an interest. Oh, well, these things just exist in the Pacific Northwest, and then you read more stories from all over the United States, and finally, like, oh, they're right here in Oklahoma, and oh, well, they're everywhere actually. And then you start going out there, and you're having these sightings, you're having these reports, and you're finding, sign of them being there. People don't realize there's a lot of these things out there, and they're just living around people. They don't necessarily have to be out in the middle of nowhere. They live around these communities, around these reservations, and they've. It seems like they've kind of adapted to living that way. Are you finding, like, do they come in and, like, raid garbage bins and stuff like that where you're at?
Yeah, that's one of the things that they like to do is to get that easy food source. And a lot of people don't have to go out there looking for it. They actually come to them.
Right.
Yeah, so
Now,
it's one of the things that we kind of especially the people that when we go to the areas there, you do your scene assessment basically,
mhm.
and then you basically look around, and a lot of them would have dog food. out
Right.
in the open or stuff like that. And then that's one of the things that you tell them, that that's probably what they're after there. So,
Recently, I believe you posted a thing about the moon phases, and
yes.
you made some comments about um, people need to pay attention to this. They need to pay attention to the farmers' almanacs and all of the things that basically our elders used to live by. Um,
Yep.
could you kind of go over some of those things and like what they need to pay attention to exactly and how it works out and everything?
Yeah, it's just from my experience, um, I know the active period for them to be coming around is normally around 4 days, 4 to 5 days before the full moon, and then 4 to 5 days after the full moon, or 4 to 5 days, before the new moon, and 4 to 5 days after the new moon. It's just from our research there that we've been, the high activity times are during those times. So,
Have you guys ever had like any like rock throwing at you or anything like that?
yeah, I've had actually a lot of rocks thrown at me. Yeah, we when we do our night investigation down at the river there, and basically just sitting there. I'll tell you one of my encounters that happened back in 2014. Was it 2014 or 2013? Anyway, I met a group of people down there and some of our other team members, and there was a total of 8 of us. And anyway, we were just kind of doing some observation, and the full moon was out. You could actually, walk down in that area without any flashlights, so that was great. And anyway, we were, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes into the time that I arrived. I was basically standing behind, this couple, and we got a rock thrown at us to our right flank, to our right side, and basically it hit the river. And then to our left, there was another one that tossed a rock at us, and then the one to the right tossed another rock at us. And then after that, it kind of got quiet. So what had happened was one of my good friends, his name is Hoyt Velarde. He actually told the guy, one of our team members, to toss a rock into the river. So he did. And then we got another rock tossed at us. And then at the same time, it let out a growl. And the the sound of the creature there to our right, because I know there was two of them, because the one was tossing from our left side, and then the one to our right. The right one let out a growl. It was so loud that you could tell that the lung capacity of the creature was so enormous, and it just let out a guttural growl. I could hear also too that it either was the chatter on back of the throat, or it could have been the teeth chatter. It just sounded so loud. As soon as that had happened, and I could feel my body, every part of my body, in my bones, in my chest, my arms, my head, it just reverberated. So, just it just reverberated. I could feel it throughout my whole body.
So how were you feeling? Like, were you like completely freaked out, or?
Yeah, yeah, I was at that moment in time, yes. But then after a while, with the adrenaline going and stuff like that, it's just like, well, holy, crap. But I didn't say that. Holy crap! I probably said more profanity words than I probably had. You know.
And a few you didn't realize you knew.
Yeah. And that was one of the encounters of rock toss, and we had a growl going. So
That's another kind of fringe debate that goes on is the zapping or the use of infrasound. Um,
yes,
is that something that you've experienced or heard about where you're at, and is that kind of what you were feeling whenever it growled at you?
yes, that's exactly what what it is. I believe infrasound, or you get zapped. I would say right after that experience and encounter, what I did was I went online and I just basically searched for you know, growls and stuff like that to try to find something similar to what I heard. And I couldn't find anything out there, except there was one from Florida that was close. But then I also found a lion growl that was really close, but it's just something that was very interesting to
Something
compare. Yeah, to compare it to.
something we've whenever I say we, I mean myself and Kumbo and Bear and the people I research with. Something we've kind of compared it to in the past is like hearing like a semi truck hitting low gear as it goes up a hill or something. It's just got that deep reverberation where you do feel it through your whole body.
Yeah.
You can definitely feel it in your chest. Animal wise, yeah, you're talking big cat range. Uh, Elephants really have a very similar growl, but I guess you would call it the rate of the
Uh-huh.
cycles or whatever isn't as fast as what Bigfoot seems to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my other encounters, and then the I've also had a few of them too that that we've actually were down at the river at different. This was at a different location, and we've actually got rock tossed at us. And I actually at that time, ever since that unexpected growl, now the first thing that I do is turn on my recorder before I get out of my vehicle, and it's always on. That's one of the things that I've learned, because you're not prepared for the unexpected.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then as soon as I do that, the camera goes on also. And I did catch the those other two times the rock toss at us. And what was interesting about before I got on with you guys tonight was I was actually working on the audio on that, and in the background it sounded to me like there were some conversations going on, very low frequency, before the rock toss, and then before the rock hit the river in the splash. And then after that, there was a little bit happening again that I kind of picked up, and then it was total quiet.
Well,
So I don't know.
that's a good segue for getting back to something I said we would talk about later. um,
Yeah.
Language. These things communicating. I'm going to judge by what you just said that you're from the camp that yes, they do have a language and communicate with one
Yeah, I believe they do.
another. The second part to that, uh, do they speak Navajo in that area?
It's possible, but I kind of doubt it.
The
Maybe I don't know. I couldn't tell you because maybe them being around us for so long, listening, observing, it's possible.
the the reason
You
I
know.
was asking is because there was a Native American woman here that also researched. She knows about these things. She grew up around them, and she said she's Wichita, and
Mm-hmm.
she told us that they can speak, maybe not necessarily their language, but they can speak the language of whatever tribe they are around. So if it's in a Wichita area, they'll speak Wichita. If it's, in a Creek area, they'll speak Creek. So I was kind of curious if you had ever heard anything like that where you're at.
No, I have not personally, but there is other people that have heard similar words, but that's just something that they've kind of observed or heard, but they really don't know because they were so involved in the encounter and the fear side and stuff like that. So I couldn't tell you.
Do you guys find a lot of like rock formations or limb formations or things of that nature?
We find stick structures. We do find some rock formation, stacked rocks here and there. Things out of the ordinary we do find.
With your window encounters, obviously the creature was coming up to your house. Um, was that something that was kind of normal over the years, looking back on it coming up on around your house and everything?
Normal.
Well, as normal as it can be. I mean,
Yeah,
do you think it was like a regular thing that it was doing,
I
or
would I would think so. Yes, I would think that it was probably a regular thing that the creature was doing. Either normally that was a singular one creature, right?
right?
But I really think that they actually there's two at all times. And yeah, going back to that, yeah, I think that's exactly what they were doing.
You were saying that that generally there's two of them at one time. And I've noticed the same thing, when, we hear, rock clacking or a wood knock or a vocalization, a whistle, some sort of a sound that suggests that it's a Bigfoot. Generally, there is another response that we hear that is, not side by side, but, maybe 100 yards away, 200 yards away or so. Have you noticed anything like that as well?
Yes. Yeah, either rock tap, either mimicking a bird chirp or mimicking maybe a coyote bark or a howl or
Yeah.
something,
As
you
far as
know.
the coyotes go, I've definitely heard. The only way I can describe it is terrible impressions of coyotes.
Yeah, these here though around this area are very good at mimicking a coyote.
What are some of the things that you listen for to distinguish between a real coyote and a Bigfoot imitating one?
It's the deep voice, if you would say, the guttural type. You can kind of hear it come out, the big, I guess if you would say the lung capacity of the creature. That would probably distinguish between a real coyote and one of them.
So as far as like the lung capacity goes, just when you're hearing it, it's just simply like more extended, like it's longer.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's just, being in the area and being used to what you hear around, your environment. One of the biggest telltale signs also too when we're in a location is using the animals as an alert system. Either the ducks or geese down at the river will fly off. Birds will start flying off or chirping at night, which they normally don't do.
Right.
Yep. Or in the area that maybe there's some communities in the area, the dogs will actually alert you also because their senses are much more higher than us.
That was one of the first things that I spoke with Jonathan and his wife Sarah about at their property is Sarah did an excellent job of documenting all the activity that they experienced on their property, and she had sent me that, and she had the different times and everything, the different groups of dogs in the area, where she knew this group of dogs is over here and this one's over here, and you could actually follow their movements through the area according to the groups of dogs.
Oh, wow.
And that's something we've also ran across here in Oklahoma whenever they'll come down into like a small town to raid the trash cans or whatever. The dogs are usually the first ones to let you know, hey, they're on their way or they got here. And you can kind of follow their movements according to the sound of the dogs and everything in the neighborhoods.
Yep. Yeah, you get the same thing here also.
When the coyotes aren't active, when the dogs aren't barking, it's me, like if there's any Bigfoot in the area, that's generally an indicator, like it's either not active, or if they're going nuts, it's like, what are they going nuts over? It's not necessarily a Bigfoot, but when the Bigfoot are around, that's usually a common denominator. You guys have quite a few coyotes down in the area that you're at?
Yeah, we do have a lot of coyotes around this area. And I guess that's what I was going to mention earlier when I was introducing myself, that I'm from the Four Corners of the New Mexico area, so we do have a lot of coyotes.
Have you ran across anything other than Bigfoot in your investigations?
No. Back when I was younger, yes, but no.
Recently, there's been a photo being passed around that I was helping Phil Pulling with the breakdown and investigating and everything. And I ran across this old episode of a television show, and it was called, I want to say, Navajo Cops. And it was following the Navajo Tribal Police, and they were handling reports of a thing called the Navajo Howler.
Yeah.
I see that.
Is that something you've heard of or familiar with?
Yeah, I've heard of the Howler.
Is it supposed to be like a Bigfoot type creature as well?
I believe it is. That's one thing that Randy actually wanted to go investigate. This was a few weeks ago, and it's only a 45-minute to an hour drive south of this location to get to that area. So that was something that he was interested in checking out. So
where do they use a lot of caves down there?
I believe so. I believe that's probably one of the places actually that they probably maybe hunker down or maybe live, or it all depends.
Well, it would make a lot of sense, like with the extreme temperatures that you have over there.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's I guess our my other encounter was actually at the beginning of the year, which was January 2nd. We actually had 3 of them that we confirmed that we saw. Actually, I saw. I didn't see it with I seen it using a FLIR camera, thermal camera. And there was possibly a 4th. So that was, at that time, it was probably 11 degrees at night. Wind was blowing. It was pretty cold.
That's hardcore, Fred.
Yeah, it is.
Being out there in 11 degrees, that's
oh
some
man,
dedication.
I'll tell you what. I thought I was crazy. What am I doing out there that cold?
Well, I think you have to be to be involved in this.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that the winter time it's not active. It's too cold for them. Actually, it's not. Or during the summertime, it's 100 plus degrees outside, and they say that it's not active, and I don't think so. I believe it's actually year round.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah,
that. The theory that I go with is it's the humans that are inactive.
exactly. I
Um,
agree.
I mean, where
Yeah,
we're at in the southern states, especially, Bear, preaches this one. Whenever the
Yeah.
summertime hits, we're done researching.
Yep.
And I don't believe it's because of their inactivity. It's because, well, for one, you can't see anything, and the insects are just horrible, and the heat's horrible.
Yep.
So we don't even mess with it. And, we wait
Yeah.
until the fall rolls back around whenever all the leaves are gone and we have better visibility and we're not being carried off by gigantic mosquitoes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that I invited Bear and Kumbo was that whenever they're in this area, give me a call and maybe we'll go do some squatching together.
That recent video you guys posted of the bone pile, uh, were you able to identify what those bones were from?
Those bones were from the cattle
Uh huh.
that were possibly harvested in that area. Yeah, Randy was the one that actually found that bone pile.
Do you
It
guys
was
find a
actually
lot of animal kills out there?
that one, yes, but others, no, I have not.
do you think that as far as the bone pile goes, like, do you think Bigfoot was the culprit, or do you think there was possibly, another predator?
Just by what Randy had observed and what Randy had found at that time, yes, we believe it was a Bigfoot kill because of what Randy had described. The bones were actually in a pile at that time, and you can actually see the large, the either the large bones were basically broken. You can see them that they were split. So something had to actually either knock two of them together or use a tree to knock it against to get the bone marrow out.
Right. I saw
Yep.
it looked like maybe a leg bone of some kind or something. And that was
Yes,
one of the things that
exactly.
kind of stood out to me is that it was broken straight in the middle and
Yep.
not split from the end like it normally would have
Yep, exactly. That's one of the biggest things that we noticed there.
been. There also, it was hard to tell in the video, but there was a lot of sticks around on the ground in the area that seemed to kind of be broken off and kind of laid there with a purpose. Did he notice any sort of like formation to the sticks on the ground?
Actually, we did, um, which I didn't capture that in the video at that time, but there was a nest on the north side of that area that actually Randy pointed out to me, and we were going to go in there, but Randy said, "Oh, no, I don't think we should right now because it's getting close to dark." And we weren't prepared, but I did wanted to go and take a look at it, but he kind of uh, steered me the other way.
Not that you guys are like trying to like kill a Bigfoot or anything, but since you're investigating and there's other predators that are out there. Like when you guys are out there, I mean, you're getting close to Bigfoots, you're getting close to cougars or jaguars or whatever they are down there. Do you guys have protection with you?
I used to always carry a sidearm with me. Um, Actually, I don't anymore. Normally, I do have a boot knife, a belt knife, and a knife that I have on the back of my pocket there. But other than that, no. I think I really think they sense or they see that you do have a firearm. Maybe they can smell it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
So have you noticed like when you're like in an active area, and if you have a gun, there's just like simply not as much activity?
Yes, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I ought to start carrying one. like I used to all the time, and not have any more encounters.
Well,
Yeah,
for me, like personally, like whenever I'm outside or prancing around in the woods, like I always
yeah,
have a gun with me.
yeah,
But another thing is like all the Indians on the reservation here, like there's so many people that most of them do have a gun with them all the time, like a rifle around their back if they're going down to the river or if they're
yeah.
deer hunting or whatever. So I don't have a problem like carrying a gun because I don't think that it's suggesting anything out of the norm.
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm by myself, yes, I do carry. If I'm out there, out there with the ATV or doing some hiking, yeah, I do carry one in my backpack. But other than that, a lot of times that if I'm going out there by myself, I'm not actually going out there looking for Bigfoot. I'm out there actually taking pictures. I like to take pictures.
Yeah, and you're like a outdoorsman. You're way into like mountain biking and things like that.
Yeah, yep. Or either that, I'll be out there fly fishing, and it's in an active area also, but I don't think about seeing one. I just ignore it and just do what I do, fly fish.
Have you noticed that the results, like when you're out like fly fishing or mountain biking, are pretty much the same as when you're actually going out bigfooting?
Yeah, I'm sure yeah, there's some instances that I've actually felt something that was watching me, and you know, and I wouldn't doubt it that there was probably one nearby.
What's your an investigation where someone has contacted you that has stood out the most to you, or you found the most?
There was a neighbor that actually called, and what had happened was she actually was home alone, and she heard something outside. I guess whatever, the dog's going crazy and the dog's yelping, and she heard a growl, and she heard something outside on the west side of the house. And I think that was probably one thing that stood out to me was, I guess at that time, because she was alone and she was afraid, she was scared, and it's just something that I can relate to because of my past experiences and stuff, and going to that place and just talking to her, listening to her, which was, I guess, comforting for her. And anyway, come to find out, the pet dog, got almost taken. There was blood everywhere. Um, you know, it was like, just basically strewn all over the place. But what had happened was it tried to grab it by the ear and just ripped off the ear.
Wow.
And so that was probably one of the things, and the dog got away. And I think probably what had saved the dog was probably when she probably got up, turned on the porch light. So that was
Or
that happened in 2014. It was around June sometime around that area, that time.
do you have occasional reports of them trying to get in the houses and stuff there?
Yeah, there's actually some people that have reported, the doorknob rattling, twist, the door push, and stuff like that. You hear a lot of people talk about that. I was just telling John earlier, before I jumped on here, was that actually Randy and his wife had a encounter yesterday evening. It was probably around 9:30 Mountain Standard Time, and his wife Mushu basically heard it growl And anyway, the dogs were going crazy, and I guess what had happened was it was probably looking through the window again at them.
Wow.
So you
So
had mentioned something about Randy, seeing it, like he couldn't make out any details, but he could see the figure like moving away.
yeah, he did see the silhouette of the creature. It was on the south side of his trailer there.
Was it a creature that he's familiar with personally?
Yes. Yep. It was probably Grandpa. There's one that he calls Grandpa.
He calls it Grandpa.
Yeah. Yep.
But what's the reason for that?
Oh, it's an older one. He can.
An alpha or a retired alpha?
It's probably retired, my guess.
Well, we're actually right now gone over an hour. Jonathan, is there anything else you want to question Fred on? I know he's felt like he's been in the hot seat this whole time.
But... Well, I just want to say, like, the reason that, like, I wanted to have, like, Fred on is because, there's all kinds of, like, Bigfoot stories and, Bigfoot, researchers and, people that, we've heard their stories, again and again. And I just think, like, tonight was, like, a perfect opportunity to, hear some really good things that are, happening down on the Navajo Reservation, with Fred and Randy. And I think, I personally think that they're a couple of guys that, are, on top of the game. Like they're doing really good work, and it was a pleasure having them.
Oh, absolutely. And I would really like to get Fred back on here with the future and maybe have Randy join him.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent.
Do you think you might be able to twist his arm for us, Fred?
I might be able to, but it all depends. I think John or Sarah might have to ask him. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been enjoyable for me and educational. I sure do appreciate you coming on. And, we'd like to have you on in the future with or without Randy.
Yeah, just I'd like to say one thing also too. Like I want to say a to both Jonathan and Sarah. I do message and with Sarah quite often, and I appreciate her help. And stuff like that. So I just appreciate her helping out quite a bit.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. I think that's so cool that you can speak your native tongue.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm seriously jealous. Like when it comes to like our language, like the only word that I know is like Nazi and thank you. I don't know anything else, and it's just cool how like cultured you are.
Yeah. Bonjour.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. This has been another episode of Bigfoot Chronicles. Crossroads. I'm your host, Matt Knapp, joined with your other host, Jonathan Brown.
Hello.
We're joined with Fred Eaton. I haven't had the pleasure of talking to Fred very much. The posts that he's made that I've read in the Facebook pages I hang out on tell me he knows quite a bit, and he's had some encounters. I know my good friend Bear speaks highly of Fred, thinks a lot of him, and we're glad to have him on the show. Fred, how are you doing?
Hello, Matt. Yes, I would say, and a lot of them no.
Right.
It all depends on the parents. So I'm actually slowly getting back to my native tongue, and I understand it fluently, but when I do speak it, my tongue gets kind of twisted, and that the things don't come out correctly sometimes.
Right.
So, and then that's when my grandparents get after me and say, "What are you saying there?"
Well,
Yeah.
there's a reason I'm asking all of this, and it's going to play into the conversation a little bit later, so be ready for it.
It depends.
But like, tell us how you got involved with Bigfoot, or what do they call it out there? Is it still called Bigfoot where you're at? Or?
Yeah, they call it Bigfoot. The Navajo word for Bigfoot. I'm not really supposed to say it now because winter's over, but
Well,
it
don't
is
say
cold outside.
it.
Yeah,
don't say
but
it.
it is cold outside, and we still got snow in the mountains, so I believe it's okay to say it. Um, it's called Yeitso, which is a basically a giant in
Okay.
Navajo. And there's other words for it, that people describe it. The majority of the Navajo language it's all by description, and that's how it's described.
Well, when you're out there with like Randy Yazzie and people that are in your research group, like what do you guys refer to it as?
We refer as Bigfoot. We also refer to as the Hustine, and of culture-wise,
Right.
and that's something that I'm working on, which is very awesome, which I enjoy.
You before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about how you speak Navajo, and you know people that don't even speak English. All they speak is your native language, and I find that really interesting because here in quote in unquote Indian territory of Oklahoma, we have a lot of tribes out here, various groups of Native Americans, but I've hardly ran across anyone that actually speaks their native language, to any extent at all. How did you guys hang on to your language like that out there?
It's basically through our elders, grandparents and stuff. But, on my side of the family, my parents went through the boarding schools and stuff like that. So it was kind of like a taboo to speak Navajo. So, that's basically that's how I was taught was, majority of it was English. So, and then, for me, they would actually leave me out at my grandparents, which, they were basically just fluent Navajo. And that's
You were saying that your
basically,
grandma doesn't even speak English?
yeah, she doesn't at all.
I think
No,
that's actually pretty cool.
are the younger generations picking it up as well?
A lot of them. I'm doing good.
How's it going, Fred?
Hey, I'm doing good, John.
We've been trying to make this happen for what, a week now? 2 weeks
Maybe a
maybe?
week indeed.
It's been longer than that.
I think we got everything plugged in the right way this time though. Um, Fred, why don't you tell us little bit of your background, how you got involved in this whole thing, and where you're from, because I think that's the biggest part of this whole thing.
Okay, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Fred Eaton, and I'm, normally when we introduce ourselves in Navajo, we normally introduce ourselves as the clan, and my maternal clan is Hushklishni, which means mud. And then I'm born for on my paternal side, which is my dad, is Todichini, which is bitter water. So just like to say you guys hello, Yate, and it's good to be here with you guys.
Awesome.
So that's cool. That's really cool. Not to get off subject or anything, but when you mentioned like the bitter water, in the movie Wind Talkers, when Adam Beach is talking about being from the bitter water clan and everything, is that like the same thing?
Yes, it is. Pretty much same thing. Yes.
No, that's cool.
So, Fred, you're obviously a Navajo.
Yes.
Were you raised traditionally, or?
I was raised semi-traditionally. I'm actually getting back into the traditional ways. There's another word that we describe it also as is Husteen Diklo, which means hairy mountain man.
Wow.
And how are these things viewed out there? Here in Oklahoma, there's a lot of people that view them as aggressive beings. Where in the Pacific Northwest, you have more of the gentle giants and everything. Like, what's kind of the tone or temperament of them where you?
I believe that it all depends. If they're, a lot of them, around here, from the stories and from the encounters and from what people describe them as, it's just like, like the encounters that I had, they were peaceful encounters, but on top of that also too, it was very terrifying. And that's something that, I wouldn't want to wish upon other people, that haven't had it, or, there's a lot of people that want to have encounters, but then again, it all depends on how well they take it mentally and, mentally.
Yeah, it's really easy to talk about like, oh, if I saw a Bigfoot, I would react this way, et cetera, et cetera. When you actually see one, it's completely different. I mean, there's so many thoughts and emotions that are going through you at the time that it's really easy to just simply freeze up and just simply get freaked out.
Exactly. Yeah, going back to when you first met, when you first asked a question